Well connected. Came down south and now I'm plugged in like my North connections.
Hey guys, I'm Khadijah.
And I'm Z.
And we wanted to share with you all something we feel God has placed on our hearts during this time. Just with the virus and everything going on, we've seen an increase in a lot of fear among the people, and we feel like there should be some questions answered to kind of help us get through this. One of the questions being, how should Christ followers respond to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Great job. Alright, so what exactly does Khadijah mean by that? What we mean by that is, like, should we actually be practicing social distancing? Should we be listening to the self-quarantine prompts? Or is it okay just to be overall afraid or uncertain at this time?
Yes, so those are all great questions, and so the first point we'll dive into is dealing with this uncertainty.
So I know there are many examples in the Bible that talk about uncertainty. One that we just chose to highlight was Philippians 1. Now, when you look at Philippians 1, it actually shows Paul. He's incarcerated right now, and he's just waiting to see whether or not he's going to be executed. So, I mean, talk about uncertainty at that time. So what he's doing now is he's actually just writing to the church at Philippi just to kind of express his thoughts as he's going through everything. So I thought that would actually be a really good starting point. As we're going through Philippians 1, I just decided to take 3 highlights out of that. The first of which is we have to understand that uncertainty can maximize faith. We see that even expressed in James 1, 2 through 5. So by that, what we mean is just in times of uncertainty, in times of fear, we really have to rely and lean on God for the answers. And it helps to maximize our faith, because at times we actually could lose sight of that, because as we're trying to go through the world, we're kind of figuring things out, making up as we go. But in times, even in this time, in regard to the COVID-19 crisis, we definitely have to look to God for the answers and for our next steps. The second point was that God can use our faith on display to bring people to himself. With a focus on verses 12 through 18 of Philippians 1, we actually see that Paul actually is leading people to Christ even during this time. And that can be the same for us. As people are going around living in fear, they're uncertain, they don't know what's going to happen next, whether it's with the government or with their health. Us showing a level of faith and reliance upon God actually can bring people to him, because they're searching for answers, and we found our answer in Christ. And the final point is uncertainty shows eternal reality. And what we mean by that is salvation versus destruction. With a focus on Philippians 21 and 28, we see first that Paul says, hey, you want to know what? To live is Christ and to die is gain. So in times of crisis, in times of panic, in times of even hardship, or even when our own personal health is at risk, we see a greater hope, and that's to be with Christ. Our hope is in Christ. And that's, opposed to the world. The world's train of thought is, even with the COVID-19 crisis, it's their ultimate demise or downfall. And when they're faced with these type of situations, that's at the forefront of their thought process, and they respond accordingly. So again, as believers, we should just definitely start to focus on our eternal hope that which lies in Christ. So now that we talked about uncertainty, I think that Khadijah, you can talk a little bit about how we're to actually respond to the situation.
Yes, so a question is, should faith or society dictate how we're responding? We believe that you should be wise during this time. So yes, that means watching the news, staying up to date with the virus and everything that's going on. But at the same time, it's how we're reacting to the news that should be different than how society is responding and reacting. So if we go, for example, to Matthew 12, 14 through 15, we see an example of when Jesus was being ridiculed by the Pharisees, and they were conspiring to kill him. And so when Jesus found out about this, he fled from that place. So we see in this instance where he didn't wait for the Pharisees to come find him. So he got up and removed himself from a potentially harmful situation. And then next we can look at the persecution of the church. So in Acts 8, 1 through 3, we see Saul, who's the head Pharisee, persecuting the church and putting people in prison. And so later on we see Stephen, the first martyr, who was murdered for preaching the gospel. And when the church found out about this, they scattered as well. So again, we're seeing the church not deciding to be be sitting ducks and waiting on the Pharisees to come find them. Instead, they got up and again removed themselves from a harmful situation. So in both of these instances, we see wisdom being used when someone is at risk of being put in danger. So while the coronavirus does put many of us at risk to contracting the disease, our lives shouldn't be controlled by the fear of that unknown. And we should use practical wisdom by, yes, physically removing ourselves from harm's way by practicing social distancing, and really honestly understanding that in faith, God is still in full control. And we'll see that in this next point too.
Yeah. Get you a her. She knows the word too, right? All right, so how exactly are we actually supposed to exercise our faith at this time? First, we go to Lamentations, where it actually places God's sovereignty on display, as the writer declares that although God does not take joy in our affliction, even in this time today, all things, whether good or bad, cannot happen without God's permission. If God has full dominion even over the sin of man and nature in its totality, my bad.
My bad.
and even nature overall, then how much more so his authority over the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes.
So our takeaways now are God's allowance of this pandemic falls under his sovereignty. We see that expressed in Isaiah 55, 8 through 9. Although it doesn't directly tie into this situation, it essentially says that his thoughts and his ways are beyond our understanding. And even in this time, we have to truly and earnestly believe that, because we don't have the answers. The second thing is in Lamentations 3, 37 through 38, God has dominion over all, both good and bad. So this is a very bad situation, but ultimately God has control over it. And his allowance, even though it's beyond what we can actually fathom or comprehend in this moment, we have to still trust and use faith to say, okay, Lord, you still are aware of what's going on and you still have full control over it.
Yeah.
Yep. And the final point is that the boundaries or reaches of the virus fall under the ultimate authority of God. Now, we decided to look at Job 38 and 39. So Job 38 and 39, if you're not familiar with the story of Job, to quickly sum it up, Job was an upright man who seemingly had done a lot. And he had done a lot according to the Bible, but he was still afflicted with a lot of different issues and pains and different things like that. So he actually takes up charge against God to question God as to why this is happening to him, if he's quote unquote a good or righteous person. So God then responds in his rebuttal to say, hey, you want to know what? I'm Lord over all, and everything falls under my dominion. Whether it's the clouds and how many are placed in the sky or painted across the sky, whether it's the boundaries of the ocean where he makes sure they don't go past a certain point, whether it's the seasonal changes, whether it's the moon, the sun, the stars in the sky, everything is perfectly placed according to his will and his design. So the COVID-19 virus, being a virus and being something that is natural and of the environment, means it directly falls under the authority of God, which means literally it cannot surpass any realm or bound that God doesn't allow it to go. So I mean, that's basically how we should exercise faith in light of these 3 points.
Yeah, so what should dictate our response at this time? Faith or other sources? We believe that you should be able to lean on both. You should be staying aware of everything that's going on, but at the same time keeping yourself safe and not letting this lead you into panic or worry. During this time, God's ultimate desire is for us to draw closer to him and depend on him in these trying times like this. So at the end of the day, we hope this video is just going to ultimately help you get through these times and really hear from God and try to understand the best way that you can everything that's going on. And we want to hear from you. So comment down below, ask us questions, tell us how God might be speaking to you during this time, and we would love to chit chat with you. So thank you for watching this video, and we hope to see you next time.
All right, thank
you.
315 to 404, Christ called me for the mission. Built for tough, but that's 'cause Jesus drives the expedition. It's time to end.